what are some other things that can help people bring a little more lightness into their practice?
So there are a few things. One is when we meditate during the down moment, when we feel a little bit difficult, failure, and feeling like this wonderful idea is not working for me. If you try to meditate a little bit, that benefit of that is a lot. Why? Because normally when we really learn is from the difficult, from the obstacles, from the problems, we learn the most. We transform a lot. Even we practice a little bit, benefit is a lot.
I'm Cort. Welcome to another episode of Dharma Lab. In just a moment, I'm going to be joined by my dear friend and collaborator, Dr. Richard Davidson, one of the leading neuroscientists on the planet. And we are also going to be joined by Mingyur Rinpoche. Now, before we dive in, I just wanted to say a few words about Mingyur Rinpoche. You'll see he is very humble and unassuming, but he is a truly remarkable individual. He is one of the true meditation masters living on the planet today. A few things I wanted to mention about him. The first is that he has an incredibly deep practice of meditation. By the time he was 15 years old, he had already completed a traditional 3-year retreat, meditating sometimes as much as 12 to 15 hours a day for years on end. By the time he was 20, he had spent almost half of his life in retreat. And now, having just turned 50, he has spent more than 50,000 hours in his formal meditation practice. So the level of mastery that Rinpoche has over his mind and mental states is quite extraordinary. And we can say this not just because we trust and respect him, which we certainly do, but because he has also been a scientific test subject in some of Richie's most important, seminal, and groundbreaking work on the practice of meditation. This goes back more than 25 years when Richie first began studying meditation scientifically. This is long before the research on mindfulness had exploded, and Mingyur Rinpoche was one of his test subjects. Some of the most extraordinary findings about the brains of these advanced meditators came from that early research. And the research on Mingyur Rinpoche specifically not only was mind-blowing to the scientists that studied him, including Richie, but also opened many doors for subsequent research. In many ways, it was a big part of what eventually helped put this kind of research on the map, to the point where now some of the leading neuroscientists and scientific labs on the planet are doing work on just this very topic. So we are so honored to have Mingyur Rinpoche with us in Dharma Lab for these discussions. We have learned so much from him over the years. We truly hope you enjoy these discussions, and we hope you get a lot out of this episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dharma Lab. I'm here with my close friend and colleague and Dharma brother, Richie Davidson. And this is a very, very special episode because we have with us our own meditation teacher, our also close dear friend and collaborator, Mingyur Rinpoche. And this is actually the first time he's joining us here on Dharma Lab. And in many ways, actually, he is the inspiration for most of what we discuss here on Dharma Lab. So this is actually a great opportunity. Normally, when we start recording one of these sessions, before we actually hit the record button, Richie and I pause for a minute and we do a little practice to set an altruistic, compassionate intention. And we thought, since we have Rinpoche here today, that actually we would do that together. So maybe Rinpoche, could I ask you just to lead a super short, 60-second practice, just how we can start off, in this case, this activity, this discussion we're going to have, but how we can begin by infusing that with compassion. Can I put you on the spot to lead us for a little micro practice?
Okay, so I think all of us somehow connect each other. What we believe is interdependent. So what we practice, our own practice, may become ripple effect for the society, for the world, and helping ourselves is also helping others. So please recognize that your practice, I want to practice to help my friends, family, and society. And today, three of us also bring this practice in the discussion, that through that may benefit for whoever want to learn and listen from these practices. And all of you, when you are listening to this practice, also bring this purposeful, meaningful intention that whatever you get from here, the peace, kind, compassion, awareness, bring to your heart, and that automatically helps your friends and family. And to recognize that, appreciate that, is wonderful. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rinpoche. What a wonderful way to start this session. And I wanted to kick this off with what I think maybe is the most common thing that I hear from people who are starting to meditate, which is that people think they're just bad at it and they think it's difficult. I hear people say, I started meditating and my mind was just so distracted. I felt like I'm just no good at this. And so they give it up, or they just have trouble making it a habit. It becomes like this big, heavy thing, another thing on their to-do list. And so many people just fall away from the practice and stop doing it. One of the things I've learned so much from you, Rinpoche, and I know, Richie, this has been really inspiring for you as well, is this idea that it's much, much easier than we typically think. And I thought that could be maybe a focus for this first discussion, simply because it's not what people typically think. We think it's hard, and we see how bad, or we think we're bad at it. So maybe we could just kick this around a little bit, have an open discussion. And I'd love to hear, Rinpoche, any opening thoughts that you have, because you have this way of approaching meditation from the point of view of this kind of light, joyful presence that many of us often feel like we're missing. So how can we tap into this aspect of meditation that's more light and playful, not so heavy and difficult?
I often ask a question, like people want to learn breathing meditation. First, I ask them, are you breathing now or not? And of course, everybody says yes. They will raise their hand. So I said, that's it. That is the meditation, because meditation means to be aware. And to be aware of something is the natural quality of our own mind. So whatever we see, we are being aware with that. Whatever we hear, as soon as if you put attention, you're aware of that sound. So it's just you to be aware of your breathing, just a little normal way what you do. No need to have any special intention or special focus, and no need to stop thinking. The most people they have misunderstood is, oh, meditation meaning present now, no past, no future, no pizza.
You got to empty the mind. I think that's the phrase everybody says.
Empty mind, empty heart, empty brain. And then what happened? The more pizza will come, right? So more thought will come. So for us, what we call let thought come and go, as long as if you still remember a glimpse of breathing, that's all. That's the meditation. And then when we do that at the beginning, what happened? We feel like more thought, more emotion come. Actually, good sign. So what we call at the beginning look like getting worse. If you feel like getting worse, very good sign.
We actually wrote a post a few weeks back on the waterfall experience, which is the phrase for exactly what you're talking about, Rinpoche. So it's helpful that you're mentioning that.
Thank you. So it's like if you want to clean dry, dirty cup and put some drop of water, what happened at the beginning looks like more dirty, but actually not become more dirty, but this dirt is coming up. So therefore, at the beginning, monkey mind little bit come up before the purifying. That's one reason. Second reason is we begin to recognize thought and emotion. So this is why it looks like getting worse. So if you feel like getting worse, very good, wonderful sign.
Richie, what do you think? What's your experience with this?
Oh, well, Rinpoche, your approach has really influenced both my own practice as well as our research. And the idea that it is easier than you think really has been a core insight in a lot of the research that we've been doing over the last few years. And there are a few things to say. One is that we actually have scientifically validated what you're describing. After the first week of practice among people who've never practiced before, they often do report increased anxiety. In certain cases, it's actually significantly higher than what they began with. But then it begins to fall off after the first week.
Hey Richie, could you mention how we measure that? Because it's an important part of that finding, like how we actually know or how we're measuring anxiety in this case.
Yeah, well, we measure it in a couple of different ways, but one of the primary ways is with a standardized, very short questionnaire that actually has been that's available from the National Institute of Health, and it's a 7-item measure that has been used in literally thousands of studies. And what we see is a small but reliable bump, an increase in anxiety after the first week of practice. Your teaching, Rinpoche, has been extremely helpful in us being able to reassure participants that not only is this normal, but it's probably a really good sign that you're actually noticing things in your mind that you may not have noticed before. And so it may indeed be indicative that you are more aware of your thoughts and feelings. And then it does begin to decline right after that. And by the fourth week, people are reporting significantly decreased levels of anxiety. But the other thing that is also a really key insight is that in our recent work, we found that even practice as short as 4 or 5 minutes a day over the course of 1 month is really beneficial. So for people who are just starting and who feel that they can't really meditate for long periods of time, the response that we have is that you don't need to begin to taste the benefit early on. The research shows that even 4 or 5 minutes a day can really be beneficial, and not only on these questionnaire measures, but even in terms of changing biological measures. We found that 4 to 5 minutes a day, if you're doing it for a month, can lead to systematic changes in certain biological measures that are relevant to our health. For example, measures of molecules in the blood that are very important for inflammation. And we find that there are decreases in those inflammatory cytokines, we call them, over the course of 1 month, where you're practicing on average about 5 minutes a day.
Rinpoche, you mentioned an example or a metaphor for what Richie mentioned a few minutes ago, which to me was so illuminating, and it captures that experience that many of us had. So when I think about my early days meditating, I remember two things. I wish I could say I remembered moments of awakening or profound mystical insights, but actually I remember feeling incredibly bored and restless was one thing. I mean, I was
Me
19
too.
years old, my mind, I was in college. So I remember sitting down and just feeling restless. Like it was just hard to sit still for 20 minutes, which is how long I was meditating at the time. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I remember is what you both pointed to, which is just racing thoughts. It felt like my mind was even more agitated than it had been previously. And those two things, the restlessness the racing mind, of course, went together. You've often shared this metaphor of the monsoon river, which to me was really helpful in understanding what was going on. Could you just share that maybe a little bit? I think it's such a helpful way to understand kind of what Richie's saying when it seems like anxiety is going up or like your thoughts are getting worse. It might actually be a little, the reality of that might be a little different. Maybe you could just share that metaphor and any of your thoughts.
Yeah. So the traditional metaphor is what we call like river in the monsoon time in India, Nepal, Tibet. So when the monsoon time river become muddy, you cannot see fish in the river. And then after a few months later, you go back to the same river. River become actually calm and clear. Now what happened? Lot of fish are there. You can see fish. And you might think, oh, where is these fish are come from? I came here this same river 4 months ago. I don't see fish at all. But now so many fish. But actually, fish were there during 4 months before. But because the river become muddy, you cannot see it. But now river become calm and clear, so we can see the fishes. So similarly, when we begin to meditate, mind become a little bit calm, a little bit clear. So awareness become a little bit illuminating, and then mind become a little bit calm. So then we see the opposite a little bit. So, actually, I have a lot of thought. I never know this before, actually, or I never think of that. There's so much image and voice and emotion. So this is why what we call is good sign.
I think for me, one of the things that really shifted all of that in a positive direction is also, and this is maybe comes to the easier than you think part of it, is that I always had this idea that those difficult experiences were like a mistake, like I was doing something wrong, like they shouldn't be happening. And if I was like a quote unquote good meditator, then my mind would just be calm and clear and I would feel so peaceful. Another huge turning point in my practice that really changed that was when you taught me, and I remember this in Joy of Living Level 1. Many people watching this have probably taken your Joy of Living course, so anybody would remember in the Joy of Living program, especially Level 1, this idea that rather than fighting your experience, you actually just use whatever happens as a support for awareness. And I remember feeling like that with my thoughts, or even with the feeling of sleepiness, or feeling dull and lethargic, rather than trying to wake myself up, actually paying attention to the feelings of dullness and sleepiness. Like, where do you actually feel that in your body? What is it actually like? So you can do that with thoughts, you can do that with emotions, you can do that with the feelings in your body. That completely changed everything for me because suddenly there's no more obstacles. And that's where, for me, it became almost fun and interesting rather than I'm just in this fight with my own mind. Richie, do you have any, what has your experience been with that? I know you've probably
Yeah,
been
I
through the
mean,
same,
for
you've
me,
probably been through
that
the same thing.
your invitation, Rinpoche, to simply take whatever is arising as support for awareness it was enormously helpful in my own practice as well. And particularly with sleepiness, that was really important. And then another phrase that you often use, Rinpoche, and maybe you can explain this to viewers, that I found also incredibly helpful, is you use the sentence, "The road to Lhasa goes up and down," as a description of our practice. And maybe you can explain what you meant by that.
Yeah. So normally in the Tibet, what we call of course, Tibet is the land of mountains. Wherever you want to go, somehow you need to go pass through one mountain, so up and down. So the center Tibet, the capital is Lhasa, and from eastern Tibet called Kham. So from Kham to Lhasa, there's a lot of up and down. So up is wonderful. Up meaning we might feel peace, joy, mind become calm, clear. So these are up experience. Wonderful. We can appreciate that. And that is getting close to Lhasa, but then up is not very long normally. Maybe a few hours, few minutes, few days, then down experience comes. So what is down? Normally there are two things. One is dullness, meaning sleepy, foggy, unclear, or not sleepy, but no taste. Am I meditating or not? How can I tell I'm in the meditation or not? Because there's no really taste. Everything's become flat, boring, kind of like dull. So that's the dullness. And the second is what we call agitation, meaning a lot of thought, like overthinking, and then emotion and sensitive, little bit guilt or angry, anxiety. So these things. So what we call for the meditation experience, this always go up and down at the beginning. Up, wonderful, getting close to Lhasa. Actually, down, also getting close to Lhasa. It's the journey to go to the Lhasa. All this up and down, up and down. Then what happened? We learn, we grow. And there is what we call realization. And the realization at the beginning is very kind of like not visible, look like very subtle. But once you got it, it never go away. It will always increase. Though experience go up and down, but the realization never go up and down. It will become better, better, better.
It's almost like there's two categories of experience. On the one hand, there are pleasant experiences where you feel a little bit more calm, relaxed at the beginning. Later, you might feel very peaceful or very open. And those are helpful because they're almost like energizing. They give us energy. They give us inspiration. They make us more motivated to practice. But if that's all you have, it's not so helpful in real life. Like we need also training for difficult stuff. And so there's another category of experiences. And this is the ones I feel like typically at the beginning we think of where maybe we misunderstand at the beginning, which is times in our practice where it actually might feel like it's not working, where it's unpleasant, where it's hard. Like for me, I had a lot of anxiety. I was very easily overwhelmed and stressed out. And another thing that you often say, Rinpoche, is that when you practice in those difficult periods, even a few moments of practicing with something difficult can be as powerful and transformative as practicing for a long time with something that's pleasant. The reality is it just doesn't feel good in the moment. So it can feel like, oh, maybe I'm not doing this right. But actually, it's doing exactly what it should, because you're creating new associations with your mental and emotional experiences. So it's not just a strong emotion. It's now a strong emotion plus awareness, or a strong emotion plus compassion or some insight. Like you're kind of reworking your kind of inner experience so that when you're out in the world, now you suddenly can have all of that up and down of life, but it triggers awareness and empathy and compassion rather than just getting carried away. I would imagine that something similar in the brain is going on. You're kind of changing patterns of activation among different brain networks and regions.
Yeah, I mean, one way to think about it is we're not so much changing the content of experience, but we're changing our relationship to our experience. And when that changes, it's expressed most often in shifts in the patterns of connectivity among networks in the brain. And so we've talked about this in Dharma Lab in the past. There are three networks in particular that are especially important here that are called the default mode, the salience network, and the central executive network. And the way that those three networks interact has been found to change even in response to minimal amounts of practice. And so this is, I think, particularly in the early stages of practice, one of the key ways that the differences in experience that we're talking about show up in the brain.
Richie, going back to this theme of it's easier than you think, one of the points you often make is this idea of shifting from states to traits. But the easier than you think part of it maybe relates a little bit more to the states. Like you can shift your brain state in an instant. So maybe like right now, if we just, like Rinpoche, you said earlier, notice that you're breathing. Are you breathing right now? Can you feel your breath? I'm assuming just even in that one instant, to Rinpoche's point, like actually that's a moment of meditation. You're consciously bringing your attention to something, but you're also in that very moment, you're changing your brain state, right? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that particularly in the early stages of practice, there are bigger differences, I think, between the periods during which you are intentionally meditating and your baseline. With more and more practice, this quality becomes more spontaneously available, so that you're more spontaneously aware, even when you're not explicitly formally meditating.
So maybe we could round out this discussion with some very practical tips. So for somebody, whether they're new to meditation, I imagine many people watching this have been meditating for a long time. What are some practical ways that we can bring some of this perspective into our practice? Again, whether we're beginners or longtime meditators. One thing that I think is already clear that both of you have mentioned is this idea that difficult experiences are not obstacles. They're certainly not a sign that meditation is going wrong. In fact, they can be a support for practice that can be a very powerful catalyst for growth. So I think that's one tip, like view going down the mountain that might be challenging. View that not as failure, but actually as a fertile ground for important insights and growth. So maybe that's one tip. What are some other things that can help just people bring a little more lightness into their practice?
So there are a few things. One is what we call when we meditate during the down moment, when we feel a little bit difficult, failure, and feeling like not working, this wonderful idea is not working for me. If you try to meditate a little bit, that benefit of that is a lot. Why? Because normally when we really learn, it's from the difficult, from the obstacles, from the problems, we learn the most. We transform a lot. Even we practice a little bit, benefit is a lot. And the second thing is what we call when the down moment comes, then we can connect with the background of the mind. So background of mind is the awareness itself. So what we call like sky and the cloud. The experience is like cloud, but the natural quality of the mind itself is like sky, the awareness itself. So in a way, we are learning detachment. But at the same time, we are connecting with the fundamental quality of the mind through this down experience. Of course, up, we feel happy, appreciate, but the down, grow more.
That's great. Richie, what would you say in terms of like a practical tip that people could take into their own lives and practice that brings a little more playful, light curiosity to meditation?
Yeah, I think that another thing that that you talk about, Rinpoche, is anywhere, anytime meditation. That we don't need to be in a special place. We don't need to be in a special posture. We can do this anywhere, anytime, and frequently I say everywhere, all the time. It's always available, and so I think one of the invitations is to, with a kind of spirit of curiosity, just in a playful way, just explore as you're going about your everyday life to remember to bring awareness in this way. and, for example, to bring compassion. I'm someone that lives a very busy life. I travel a lot, as you do too, Rinpoche, more than me. And when I walk through airports, that's an opportunity to just connect with people, to even just non-verbally, to wish them wish them a day of ease in their travel. And just explore with a kind of lightness. And that really amazingly can affect the quality of one's whole experience and and have a day that otherwise might be considered stressful actually be nourishing.
Yeah, I've found the anywhere, anytime instruction so helpful too. And maybe just to add my own little tip that piggybacks on that one, I've found one of the easiest ways to do that in practice is to use transitions as kind of reminders, because the hardest thing actually is just to remember to do it. I think that's actually the hardest thing, because you literally can do this wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whoever you're with, but we forget about it. We get caught up in what we're doing. So what I've often done is that you use little points of transition, and it kind of it's almost like you reboot your mind after each transition. So for example, sometimes if I'm walking or I'm jogging or out doing something, I can do this visually. Actually, I even do this when I'm driving. I'll pick something off in the distance and I'll just say, I'm just going to be aware of my breath up until I get to that point. And then I'll just kind of practice. It's not like I'm just generally going to be aware. It's like a very specific thing. And then I'll oftentimes shift. So then when I get there, then I'll say, okay, then I'll pick another object way off in the distance, but I'll maybe shift it and be like, okay, now I'm just gonna practice resting in open awareness. I'm just gonna be or allow my mind to just rest in effortless presence up until that next one. And somehow having like these little points of reference makes it a little easier to kind of have that continuity. Or you can also do it with activities. So if I'm doing the dishes, I'll be like, okay, while I'm washing this dish, I'm going to be aware of the feelings in my hand. And I'll just be very aware of that. And then I get to another dish and then I can say, okay, now I'll do it with sound and I'll be aware of the sound for this dish. And somehow the specificity for me makes that anywhere, anytime aspect much easier. So and then it becomes just kind of fun. It's playful. You're just kind of experimenting and just seeing how it shifts and changes your experience. And I found that such a helpful way to just infuse everything in life with meditation. It just gets so much easier. So Rinpoche, any final thoughts before we call this one a day? This has been a great discussion.
Thank you. So I think anyway, anytime meditation, of course, at the beginning, we need to begin with one object, might be breathing. Then we lost with a pizza, let's say. And you can, when you find out that you lost with the pizza at the beginning, few seconds, be with
Meaning
the
your
pizza.
mind is thinking of pizza. You're like kind of distracted with thinking about eating dinner.
Dinner or to-do list, whatever. So that thought comes in your mind. Oh, I forget my breathing, right? So that moment, don't feel bad, but be with the pizza, image of pizza or restaurant, whatever, few seconds, then come back to the breathing. Then you're lost with the past. Be with the past for a few seconds. Slowly, you can be with any thought, any emotion, any feeling, just like breathing. So not necessarily only breathing, any object. So anytime, anywhere, with anything.
That is a perfect note to end this discussion on. Thank you so much, Rinpoche, not only for taking the time today and for sharing all these great insights, but just for everything you've are doing in the world to help teach these ancient practices and to keep them alive in this world where we so desperately need it. So I hope we can have you back for many discussions. Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you.